Hi guys, Tracy here, and I'm going to talk to you guys today about layering. I do get a lot of questions about layering, so I hope that you guys find this helpful and interesting. So I am going to be doing a layout after I talk about layering. So I have my Scraptastic Never Tear Us Apart kit, which is the October scrapbooking kit from Scraptastic. I'm just going to put that aside for a little bit while I talk about some examples of layering that I just have in my own scrapbook. I took a quick look through some of my older scrapbooks because I wanted to kind of draw your attention to some layouts that I knew I did that were kind of had examples of some of the topics that I was going to talk about today. I went through a phase where I did a whole lot of layering. When I looked back at my scrapbooks, it seemed to be kind of like through the winter and spring and summer of 2012, starting around like March and April and going through until like October of 2012. So if you go back in my YouTube channel and want to see some examples of layering process videos, that would be the time frame that you'd see lots of examples. And then of course they're scattered throughout the rest of my channel as well. I have this one out first because this is probably my all-time favorite layout that I did. I love the photo, but I also love the layering that I was able to put together for this one. And it does show a lot of examples of some of the things I'm going to talk about today. So I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of have a look at the layout before I talk about the principles, and then I'll draw your attention to different parts of it. I also have this one, which was done around the same time as that one. They're side by side in my scrapbook, so I assume they were done around the same time. My scrapbooks are organized chronologically according to when I scrapbooked the pictures, and so it's not chronological according to the photos. This layout has lots and lots and lots of layers. So when you look at it, there's just like a whole lot of detail. In fact, I don't remember being this detailed in my scrapbooking. That's a lot. And so it has like even layers within the layers. So there's kind of like this layered on that, layered on that, layered on that, with little die cuts tucked in behind. And that's a really fun way to use up supplies. And then this one is an example of layering all within the same manufacturing line. So this was a line by Basic Gray. I think it was the, oh gee, I can't remember the line, but I will link the process videos for all of these. I believe there's process videos for every one of these 4 examples I'm going to show you, so you can find them in the information section above or below or beside this video, depending on what kind of a device you're watching it on. And this one uses some crumpled up vellum and a glassine envelope and some pins and some staples and washi tape and all kinds of things, kind of layered a whole bunch of different papers from the same paper line. It's a Basic Gray paper line, but I just can't remember which one it was. And then I stuck this one in as an example of more minimalist layering. So this one has lots of layers, but doesn't look quite as cluttered and piled up as some of these other ones. I mean, there's a lot to take in on this one in particular, and lots to take in on this one too. So I just wanted to show you guys that layering doesn't have to be terribly complicated or overwhelming in your scrapbook. So this one has a lot of negative space, and then it has a lot of flat layers. So it doesn't really stand up from the page very much, even though there are lots of layers in there and lots to look at. I didn't pop dot any of them, and most of the things that I used are pretty flat. Even the flare badge is one of the flatter kinds of flare badges, so it's pretty flat. And then I just did a little bit more layering over here in the corner. So I will refer to these as I'm talking about the principles, just because, yeah, I think it'll make it easier. So the first principle that I wanted to talk about was pattern paper. So I'm going to pull out my Scraptastic kit again to talk about pattern paper. The very first step for me, for layering, is I want to think about what pattern papers I want to use. And so with a photo like this with lots of fall colors, there's lots of fall colors in this kit. So I'm gravitating towards these two right away, this one and this one, because there are lots of fall colors in these, and I think they look really nice together. So these are fairly bold patterns, and you know, they have a lot of detail. This one is a large one, and this one is, I guess I would consider this a medium-sized print. And so I'm always trying to kind of balance both colors and patterns when I'm thinking about pattern paper. And so, because a lot of pattern paper has pretty much the same texture, so I'm not really thinking about texture yet at this point, although, you know, sometimes I am, because the vellum and the overhead transparency has a texture to it. This is a really shiny, smooth texture. So I always want to balance kind of patterns that are bold with patterns that are less bold. So this is kind of a very bold one, a medium bold one. And then this would be an example of a more subtle pattern. And, you know, that would be another example of a subtle pattern. And this one is very neutral and subtle. So that's kind of how I'm thinking. And I basically, when I'm using something really bold like this giant chevron, I might want just a tiny little bit of it showing, just maybe some of the brighter parts of it, like maybe, you know, that much of it showing. So I might want to kind of have less of this and have more of some of these more subtle, easier on the eye type of patterns. And I also want to make sure that I've got a nice balance of color here, where I've got, you know, not too much yellow, because there's lots of yellow in the photo, and, you know, this kind of bluey, the gray in my car is kind of picked up by the steely bluey gray, grayish blue pattern here. And there's gray in this as well. So I'm kind of thinking about mixing these patterns in a way, and I'll probably add in a camera because this orange color is really beautiful. And, you know, certainly this is probably a nicer yellow than this one. So that might be the yellow that I choose to use. So that combination of patterns is really appealing to me right now, because it has a lot of the colors that I want to use for this fall layout, and it has a nice combination of, you know, some really bold patterns and some more subtle patterns, another bold one, and this one is very kind of soft. And a lot of times people talk about mixing things like, you know, one striped with one geometric and one floral or something like that. I don't always follow that exact rule, but I'm kind of thinking about harsh and soft. So if you think, I don't use a whole lot of florals, but this would be kind of like the soft equivalent of a floral for me. And this is fairly soft as well. And these are more kind of what you would consider geometric or stripes and that sort of thing. So that's just my thought pattern for picking out the pattern paper. So now that I've picked these, I'm going to put them here. I still might draw into this, especially for this beautiful wood grain paper that I have. It was the back side of these cut aparts, so I have a lot of these cut aparts still left, which I can throw in. You know, some of the cut aparts might make it a detail for the layers, but so I'm just going to put those aside and focus on these as my main pattern papers. And even this one isn't, I'm not going to use this as a pattern paper, I'm going to use it as an accent. I'm going to cut out one of the cameras. So, and I'm just seeing another piece of this chevron just in case I need it. So these papers are, these two are from Crepe Paper. No, these two, this one is from Crepe Paper. Oh gee, they match so nicely. I thought they were from the same collection. This one is from Crepe Paper, the Close Knit collection, and this one is from the Fancy Pants Happy Go Lucky collection. And this one is also from the Close Knit collection from Crepe Paper. This one is also from the Happy Go Lucky collection, and it has this really nice stripe on the other side. And this one is from the Fancy Pants Collecting Moments collection. It has this on the back. So those are the papers that I'm thinking about using. And a lot of times when I do a layered a layered layout, I choose a fairly either cardstock or very, very plain background paper. So in this case, it's school paper, but that's because it's a school layout. This one is not very plain, like it has a pattern, but it's a tight pattern that kind of when you're at a distance, it reads as a gray. And then this is another cardstock, and I don't use a lot of cardstock, so the fact that there are 2 cardstock examples in this sample of 4 layered layouts just goes to show that I do use more plain backgrounds when I'm using a lot of layers. So I'm probably going to dip into the cardstock that comes in the kit. And if I can't find something that came in the kit that I really want to use for this, I'm not sure if this might be too peachy for the look that I'm going for, especially where it's my husband in the picture. And then this might be a little bit too bold and outside of, like, it's not quite the right shade of green. Like, I think it's going to compete too much with the green in the photo. So I'm not going to use that one. Definitely not going to use that one. And I think that this brown piece is probably going to be too dark, although it might make everything pop out too. So that one's a contender, and this is just going to be too much yellow, so I don't want to use that. So that's also not a contender. I mean, the other option is to use a pattern paper that is a bit more subtle. So this one is a wood grain. It does have that pinkish look to it though, so I'm gonna go with no for that one. So right now I'm leaning towards this one, and I might even lean a bit further and go outside of my kit and just get a plain piece of maybe cream cardstock for the background. I don't know, I don't really have to commit to a background quite yet, because what I do when I am layering is I kind of build my layers and then I plop them onto a piece of cardstock at the end. So a lot of times I'll have a couple of options for cardstock. I'll just kind of hold them here, and then once I build all my layers, I'll check how it looks on this and how it looks on that and decide at the end. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to go with this, though it does kind of pick up on those colors right there. I'm going to keep this one out just in case it makes an interesting, unusual kind of background. So I'm going to keep both of those out. I'm just going to run to my paper area and grab a piece of neutrally creamy type of background paper. So these two both read as neutrals, but they've got a bit of interest in them. This one is a nice warm one that I think is going to match with the tones in the other papers a little bit better. So I'm going to put this one away and keep this one out as a contender along with these. It's also more plain than this. This is quite eye-catching, so I like this one a little bit better. So I am going to, I often start with the back layer, but I think I'm going to start with some of the front layers. So I'm pretty sure that this one is going to be the thing that's going to be, this is going to be my bottom layer, and now I'm going to start to build. So now that I have my papers out, let's talk about the next principle. So the first principle was patterns and proportions, and thinking about, you know, which patterns you want to put together and how much of each pattern you're going to see. So I'm going to see less of this and more of these more neutral ones. The second principle or idea that I think about when I am scrapbooking is texture. And so I'm going to move some stuff over here so that I can talk a little bit about texture. Move this out of my way and show you some examples of texture in here. So anything corrugated is texture, of course, that adds really nice texture. These kinds of flowers, resin flowers, and any of these store-bought embellishments that add you know, interest. I'll show you some examples. Stuff like these, this came from a previous kit. These kinds of brads that are combinations, they've got metal on them, and they've got a glaze, and they've got paper elements as well. So these make interesting texture. I have this assortment of corduroy brads from Stampin' Up, and these These plain ones can be misted to make them any color that you want. They take color really nicely. And these are some Studio Calico bow ties from a previous kit from Scraptastic. And so any of these sorts of items that you can find really do add quite a lot of impact on a layered layout. Let's see, what do I have in here that adds texture? So I've got this kind of die cut piece here that adds quite a lot of texture. It's behind everything. And then let's see what else. I've got like punched edges. I've used a stapler. I've got some sewing, which adds texture, and lots of different kind of die cut and punched edges, and then lots of shapes. And then these are kind of like enamel dots, but they're bumpy. So that's another and this twine here gives nice texture. And then I've got some chipboard pieces that give you, some of them are shiny some of them are shiny chipboard and some of them are more matte chipboard. And then these flare badges give you some texture. This is some layering paper that I have, and I'm going to talk about that. This and this are from my stash of layering papers, and basically whenever I go to a stationery store or a little cute, unique place that sells cool stuff, I'm always on the lookout for texturing, for layering papers that are fairly plain but that have some interest. So this one has little bits of beads all over it, glass beads, and then this one is like an eyelet pattern cut into it all throughout the paper. And then also vellum, and anything that's left over that was punched or die cut is another good way to add some texture. And doilies add beautiful texture as well. I've got twine on this one, and some a sequin here, and crinkled up stuff. So I crinkled up, this is like a shiny vellum, and I crinkled it up before I put it on the layout, and that adds texture. Washi tape, there's different kinds of washi tape, so this one is kind of a smooth shiny one, and some of them are more matte. I've got another doily in here, and then this glassine envelope adds a really nice texture. It's kind of adds an interesting edge, but it's also kind of shiny and a different type of texture as well. Tags are really nice because it's the tag itself plus the little reinforcer, and the string on it adds texture, so that's kind of nice. And then on this example, I think that there's nothing really new other than there is a transparency on this one. So this noted piece here is a transparency. I do use a lot of paper bags, or I went through a phase where I used a lot of paper bags, but there are none on these. So that is texture, and I'm going to pull out my layering paper just to show you how I go about picking out some elements of texture. So these are things that I will add to my layers. I have a couple of different kinds of waffle paper. These you can buy from Stampin' Up. I don't know if anybody else makes them, but they come rolled like this, and then they roll out, and it's like a tissue paper, but it's got all these horizontal marking kind of texture on it. And they're pretty cool, and I haven't used the gold one yet, and the gold one is the only fallish colored one that I have. I'm not sure that I'm going to add this, but I'm going to rip out a piece of it anyways. Just, it's a little bit hard to get it started because it's glued to itself here on the end. But I'm going to rip out a little piece of it. I don't have the time to kind of make sure I do a good job of this, so I'm just going to rip out a piece like that. I might stick in someplace. I'm adding that to my pile. Probably not going to use red in this layout. Probably not going to use blue. These are vellum that I got at a stationery store. This one is really pretty. I might use a tiny bit of it actually. So I'm going to add that to my pile. I've got some of that POW glitter paper. I have a paper bag that would actually look nice on a fall layout, so I'm going to add this to my pile. These are pretty, and I might add a piece of this in there. I like to start with more than I need. Another piece of red vellum, more of that. And this is interesting too. This is like a fibrous paper. It's matte on one side and plain, and on this side you can see all kinds of little fibers in it. So I'm going to put that in my pile. I have these leaves. They're, I forget what you call these, tree leaves. They're kind of like the skeletons of a leaf, and I might use it. I may or may not mist it first. So I'll put that in my pile. That adds beautiful texture. I have some notebook paper like this. It's kind of like a rough type of recycled paper. If I do journaling, I might want to put it on that. These are too summery. I have some of this paper that somebody sent me. And I have some crepe paper, which is white. I'm probably not going to use that. I have a tiny, tiny bit of that eyelet paper left over. This is something that I embossed and never did use, so I threw it into my texturing pile. This is some of that paper, which has the glass beads on it. I'm going to take that out because it's nice to add something frilly to a layout. Some black. Oh, I have more of that eyelet paper. Hooray! And I have a whole other sheet of that. So those are my layering papers. I've taken a bunch of stuff from there. That's probably enough. I'm going to go put them away. I just keep them in a tray, and it says layering, and I just throw it into one of the shelves of the Jetnex. This is the drawer that I keep my tabs and doilies in, and tabs and doilies make fabulous layering elements. So, not necessarily on a fall layout, although if I colored it, it might make a nice element. So if I misted it, I'm not really looking for that white delicate look, but this one, for example, which is yellow on one side and it's kind of like a beige color on the other side, this one might be nice. So I'm going to throw that in my pile. Got a bunch of wooden tabs and a bunch of store-bought tabs. I've got some punched doilies that No Small Wonders from Etsy sent me. And these are really cute and make great little elements. And some of these colors are in my paper, like this blue I recognize, this color, yellow. So I'm going to take a couple of these. I'm not going to use all of them, but I'm going to take them anyways. And I've got a little tiny bit of gold. This is from a class I took with Kelly Perky. This was some leftover gold doily, so I'm going to put that in my pile because gold is nice in the fall. And then these are a bunch of kind of tabs. Some of these tabs are from No Small Wonders, and some of them I die cut with my Silhouette. So I'm going to just kind of remember that they're here and might pull into them. Chipboard is another thing that can add texture. I'm not going to pull out my chipboard right now, but I have some really cool textured elements that came in the kit this month. So we have some of these resin flowers that add some nice texture, and we have some brads, or not brads, enamel dots. We've got some pieces of wood, little wood chips, wood veneers, and some corrugated. And because Scott is in this picture, it's a good chance for me to use a boy. I have girls, so it's hard for me to use those boy icons. This twine certainly gives some really nice texture, and the washi tape as well is like a flat texture. This isn't, this is flat, but it has beautiful wood grain texture printed on it, so I will probably make use of that in this layout too. So I'm going to bring my supplies back over so you can see what I have all together now. So I have lots of texture now, putting the smaller things on the top so that I can see them. Some paper bag. I'm probably not going to use this shiny one. It seems like something that I'd like to put more on a nighttime layout. And don't forget the little tiny bit of waffle paper. And so I'm going to set all of this stuff like this so I can see a little bit of what I have. And I'm just going to set it over here to the side. And now I'm back to my papers. So texture was the second thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. The other thing is interesting shapes, and I think I kind of went over that when I was talking about texture, is some of the things that I really like about, whoops, some tissue paper. Some of the things that I really like about these is that they are interesting shapes. So this has a leaf shape to it, obviously. This has an intricate design. These are fairly intricate. This has lots of kind of corners, and this one is a rectangle. And I like to kind of make sure that I have a balance between roundish and softish type of shapes like these, and more kind of harsh, edgy shapes like rectangles and triangles and that sort of thing. And this is kind of very organic looking, and then, you know, some of these things are more kind of rectangular or geometrical type of shapes. And so some of the things that you can use to add interesting shapes would include punches and die cuts and flowers and brads, enamel dots and bow ties and paper clips that are those interesting little shapes that you can get, and die cut pieces and that sort of thing. So then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was angles and curves. So when I put together my layers, I like things to be slightly askew, kind of like this, but not so askew that it's kind of like really wonky and crazy like a Dr. Seuss type of thing. So if I'm looking at these, that's too askew. I want them to look kind of like not straight, but also not too lined up. So I'm always mindful of the angles and curves, and I like to, if there's an area of my layout that has too many harsh edges, I'll add some circular or curvy type of elements in there just to kind of try to balance that out. And I also like to have a balance between horizontal lines and the vertical lines in my layout. So I don't like too many things to be horizontal. So for example, this layout here has lots of horizontal, like almost all of the layers are horizontal rectangles. So I stuck some vertical lines right here on the corner by using this, and this piece right here is more of a vertical as well. And that just kind of helps to balance it so it's not all the same. And then I did kind of the same thing on this one where there's lots of horizontal, and so I put this bracket here to make a little bit of a vertical. Washi tape can make another really good vertical. Did I do that here? Yes. Here is the opposite. Almost everything was vertical, and so I put this envelope and tag in here, and this tag probably has some journaling. Yeah, it does. Some journaling on it. And here's another example of where everything was very kind of angular, so I added some of these tags here that have some roundish edges on them right there, and I also added the doily in just to soften up this corner a little bit. And then this medallion type of shape also softens the corner. Let's see. This one, yes. So we've got, this one was mostly vertical, and so I've got a couple of horizontal elements here. I've got this, and then I've got this line of girls here, and then this this envelope here, this glassine envelope, also runs horizontally. So, and then you can see here how these were all rectangles, and I softened it by adding this circle shape here and a couple of circles and tags and things here to just kind of, and this is a border punch that just kind of softens things up a little bit. And then the other thing that I'm going to keep in mind that I kind of talked about when I talked about patterns is colors. So you want to always balance the colors so that you don't have too much of one color all in one spot and nowhere else.